Happy Friday. I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Welcome back to my channel. Before I get started on today's project, I want to quickly mention that if you're hearing a loud noise in the background, that is a fan to become background noise because one of our family members in the house is working the night shift now, so I'm just hoping that will drown out the sound of my jibber jabbering so that we don't wake up anyone who is still asleep. So for today's project, I have a share for you. This is a finished project, but make sure you stay tuned to the end because I'm going to show you how to create the base for this project. So I'm making a triple fold pocket folio, and I'm going to be using the Around the Table collection from P13. So it's really cute. I wanted this to be a simple, easy to create folio covered with gorgeous kitchen inspired paper. So it could be a recipe folio, or it could just be a memory keeping way to document pictures and memories of your times in the kitchen. You could easily tuck in some recipes into the pockets or other flat memorabilia. So there's lots of ways you could use this folio, and I just want to mention how thick and heavy it is. It's very sturdy, and it used only one 6x6 paper pad. So we'll get to that in just a second. I just want to quickly flip through this and show you. I put a very simple wrap closure on it, which is just some pretty baker's twine, and then I've attached a brad so I can wrap that around and secure that. So anything that you put in the pockets will be very secure. And then I did go ahead and finish that flap on the inside as well because you want it to look nice and finished. It also hides the other side of that brad, so just to make sure that everything looks pretty and tidy and nice. So this is one of the pattern papers, and this is the large print for me. I really wanted to celebrate the vibe that we get from this kitchen scene, so I didn't put any additional layering on it. I didn't want to cover any of it up, and some of it is kind of hidden under the flat, but that's okay because it definitely does add to the overall vibe of this. It's very farmhousey, a little bit retro, very vintagey, and so I really wanted it to have that as the central focus. This is the cover now, and it will open up, like I mentioned, a trifold. So this is going to be the first page that you see when you open the flap, and so it's going to open from top to bottom. And I just used a combination of the pattern papers here and very minimal layering because this is quite thick. I want to make sure to leave room in the pockets. So this doily is one that I use often, and I was able to get a couple of circular die cuts out of the remaining pattern paper once I was getting through it so that I could have a contrasting pattern. And then I've got these sweet little images that I cut out. So this is the Around the Table collection, and I used up most of it, so I don't have much of the paper pad left to show you, but it had a combination of some vintage images and just really pretty pattern paper. This is very nice, thick cardstock it's printed on. I picked this up from scrapbook.com. On the back, it has some images here. If you're very good at fussy cutting, you can get a nice smooth border around these images and select which ones you want to stack up. Some of them did seem a little small or out of place. I probably wouldn't put broccoli on a book, but you do you if that's what you like. But there's lots of images to work with, and this particular paper pad had two of these sheets. One had more of a pink vibe, and then the other one had more of a blue vibe. I only picked this particular blue page because I wanted to be able to show you the front cover of this paper pad. So this is the collection, and then you got some good die cuts, or you're going to make them into die cuts when you fussy cut them out. So you're going to have lots of nice layering opportunities, and one of the patterns also had some labels, so I cut those out as well. And then I just used very mindfully the scraps as I worked along so that I could include some alternate pattern stripping, and that just makes it a little bit more interesting. So this collection has 24 sheets, and there are 4 of each one, so that was perfect. I was able to get all of the base layers on and have enough of the offcuts to use as layering elements, so that was pretty perfect. And then, like I said, it's going to open up one more. I'm not going to be able to get all of this in the screen at one time, but I just wanted to show you how nicely that all opens up. And so for each of the pockets inside, I have created a folded insert, and they are covered all around inside and out with the collection paper, so it's nicely finished and very sturdy. You could easily put a focal picture here if you're going to use it as a scrapbook, or put some journaling and then tuck lots of good stuff into this insert. Here's that pocket I mentioned. I chose the more neutral papers for my background so that the more pattern paper and the die cut images would be really focal images rather than getting lost in a big pile of pattern paper. And so I've got 3 pockets inside, and both of these have layering of those cut aparts. I had quite a lot to work with, and then this larger page as well. So there's lots of room in here for whatever you want to include, and just really sweet. These smaller patterns will look great when you layer pictures over them because you won't lose what the pattern is about. So I have 2 of these that are finished with the embellishing, and then one is another of that large print of that kitchen, and I just really liked how this sort of had room for journaling. If you want to write directly on that page, you've got plenty of room to do that, and then it's finished on the inside with that check. So I've got 3 pockets on the inside, and then 1 page that's just finished, and that closes all of these flaps in together. So you can see I'm folding that up, and it keeps going and going and going. And then I did finish the back with coordinating pattern paper because I want it to look nice all the way around. So here is the book, and I just wanted to show you what I had left of this collection. So I think if you are going to a crop, or you craft in a camper like I do, or you go to your friend's house, this would be a pretty ideal sort of pattern, because if you have your die cuts ready to go and you have a small paper trimmer, you can just make these very easily with very few supplies, and they look really great. And I think that it doesn't take up a lot of room on a table. So even if you have to share your space, that works out pretty well too. So like I mentioned, there were a couple of different kitchen scenes in this. I don't know how easily you can see that. There's like 2 different patterns, and like I mentioned before, each one had 4. The other one I liked the back of, so I used that alternate pattern for a larger page, and this worked really well for the cover because it kind of had a full story and then just a little extra on top. And so this one would have been nice as well, but I couldn't figure out a good place to cut it sideways. So this was one that I used on that smaller insert. It has a dark background, and so I didn't incorporate that into the book anywhere else, just because I thought it was really kind of too dark for the lighter shades. The color story was bright and fresh and cheery, and although these are nice, I think that it might have distracted it, and I didn't want to use more than one of each of these scenes, just because I didn't want to have it look too matchy-matchy. So these all did come from the 6x6 paper pad, and I went ahead and picked up this sheet as well, the coordinating 12x12 pattern paper from the collection. And I originally thought that I would use my circle die cut and remove all these fun images and incorporate them in some way, but it didn't work out for this project. But I certainly can see using them for tags, or other, maybe like a little kitchen banner or something like that would be really sweet. So that would be the cat, if you heard that scratching noise. It's just never quiet around here, no matter how hard we try. This has the beautiful houndstooth on the back, and I really, really love that. I think if you are looking at just using this B-side as a cardstock, it coordinates really well, and it's more of a charcoal than a solid black, so that would be pretty. And maybe if you're making a card, you could use that as your paper border and raise the center section up. So you can see that I can still probably get a full size greeting card out of this, and that would be a good way to use up scraps. So that is the Around the Table collection from P13. Another item that I picked up was the little decorative tags. They're so cute. It has a little mixer and all the little vintagey images. I didn't use these either. I kind of was thinking I would incorporate them somehow, but wouldn't these be great if you are gifting a handmade treat? You could put what's in it on the back so that the recipient would know what you are gifting them, and it's already got the little hole punch. So this is a cute way to use up some additional supplies that didn't make it into the intended project. Once I got done, this was all that was left of that paper pad, and just really tiny little strips. I think I got a good use out of that. I would probably pull the houndstooth out in the plaid and just make some little die cut banners, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with how much of that I got through. So that's the collection. I did mention I got this from scrapbook.com, I think. So here is that book again, and I'm going to show you how I create the base. Okay, so the pieces for this book base are very simple. I'm going to need two 12 by 12 sheets of 110 pound cardstock. It's very important that you pick the heavyweight cardstock because you want your folio to be very sturdy and strong. And so the first piece I just cut into two strips of 5 inches and use the full 12-inch width. So I'm going to come in with my scoreboard for my first piece and score it at 6 inches. And then I'm going to score it again at 6.5. And so the measurement for the outside of the book is going to be 6 by 5. And then my first portion that is on the inside has a spine of 1/2 inch. Remember, you need all that extra room inside to fill up with all your paper layers. So here's the first piece. The second piece I'm going to score at 6 again, and then this time it's 6 3/4. This is going to be the other side of that spine, so we're just going up in 1/4 inch increments so that we can build in all of the layering. And then the last piece I have is still 5 inches, but this time it's only 9 inches long. And so I'm going to score once again at 6 inches and then at 7, and this is going to be the outside cover, and it will be the 1-inch spine and then a 2-inch flap for the closure. So what you have left of this piece is going to be 7 inches, and I cut that 7 inches into 4-inch strips, and these are going to become the pockets. So what I want to do is bring in something to protect my work surface, and then I'm going to use wet adhesive to assemble these, which is not like me. I usually try not to use things that are going to make a mess, but I think for this book you do want to go ahead and use that more stronger, more permanent adhesive because it's quite heavy. So I'm going to put the adhesive on the shorter of the cut side because I'm going to cover the cut mark with more layers of that pattern paper, so it's not going to show. And so if you like Tombow, use that. I used some Aleene's for my first book and it worked out fine. I just want to make sure not to get too crazy and add too much so that it splooges out the side. And so I know this is on the inside and this is going to be my longer piece, so I'm just going to turn that here and join them together, making sure that I keep everything nice and straight and even. And you want to put good pressure on that while it sets up. If you have a big stamping block, that's usually what I do to weight these down, these pieces, while I work along. That way I'm not waiting and using my time waiting for glue to dry. Okay, so here's that first fold, and then here is the other side. So now I want to put my adhesive here and then line up my longer side on that. This is going to be the outside cover, and it will have the flap on it as the closure. And like on your first piece, you want to make sure everything is nice and straight and even. and press that down till it sets up. You would want to wait a little bit longer than I am, but for the sake of moving along. So now you can see how that's going to operate, and it is very nice and thick and sturdy. So when you're decorating it, I'm turning my book on this side so that it is a profile rather than a landscape. Those 4 by 7 inch pieces that you have left are going to become the pocket. So I've got to bring my scoreboard back in. I'm only going to demonstrate one of these because you only need to see it once, and then you can do that for all 3 portions. But I went ahead and scored this first at 3 inches. I'm just going to bring in this green piece of paper for demonstration, but you would use the paper that goes with your collection. So I'm just moving that so that my score line is here at the top, and I'm not looking at the numbers, I'm looking at where it falls on the scoreboard. I want a line right on the outside edge, and I'm going to score that, and then I'll move this whole thing over just slightly so that I got a line on this side as well. And that's a good way to make sure that your pockets are flat and you don't get that lumpy bumpy bits in the middle. I really hate when that happens. So next you want to remove the corners here. Then you can fold up on your score line. And then I'm going to come in and use some of my double-sided adhesive just to hold this pattern paper in the pocket. And then we'll go back to the wet adhesive. So I'll just hold this pretend pattern paper in place and fold up right on that edge. Make sure this is nice and secure. Then I'm going to use more of my double-sided tape on the top, and then I'm going to bring that tape in just a little so I'll have room for that tombow, but this will just give it a little bit of extra stickiness so that that glue can set up and everything will be nice and permanent. So I've got the tape paper pulled, and I'm going to come in and add a little bit of that tombow to my pocket. Then I'll grab our base here. I'm going to use this for the very bottom page and just line everything right up because it's going to be 5 inches, and so everything will be covered. Let that glue set up again, and then here is your first flip and your second flip. So you would want to do 1 each for these remaining 2 portions, and then fold that up and use your flap as a closure. I think you could also put a magnet in there if you like that, or a larger ribbon tie would be great too. If you wanted to further embellish the cover, I would definitely consider keeping a larger, more dimensional things on the sides where it's not going to get wrapped up in the ribbon, but this would work for any kind of folio that you want to create or any season. And it was pretty easy to make, and it was only 2 sheets of this heavy cardstock for the base. So that is all for our trifold pocket folio created with the P13 Around the Table collection. I picked that up from scrapbook.com, and I will make sure to link that in the description below if you want to check that out. You can also find links to all our social media sites in the description as well. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. I would definitely consider keeping a larger, more dimensional things on the sides where it's not going to get wrapped up in the ribbon, but this would work for any kind of folio that you want to create or any season. And it was pretty easy to make, and it was only 2 sheets of this heavy cardstock for the base. So that is all for our trifold pocket folio created with the Around the Table collection from P13. I will link that in the description. If you want to check that out in the description, you can also find links to all of our social media sites. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. So that is all for our trifold pocket folio created with the P13 Around the Table collection. I picked that up from scrapbook.com, and I will make sure to link that in the description below if you want to check that out. You can also find links to all our social media sites in the description as well. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. And I thank you so much for watching. Bye.